Hey, how's it going? Hugs here. Tonight I want to talk about camping in SCP. The last video did really well, so I was like, hey, why not do another one? You guys seem to like it, and I like talking, so why not? So there's an issue with camping for SCPs, where basically in the checkpoint between entrance and heavy, there's only one way to get through, and that's through that little checkpoint through that little door, right? That leaves SCPs like 106, 049, really, any SCP can just hold down checkpoint really easily. Preferably, as an SCP team, don't do this. If you do watch this video, everyone's going to hate you for it. It's not a fun strat for you. It's not a fun strat for anyone in the game. It's just really annoying overall, and people only do it to piss other people off and just win, I guess, for bragging rights or whatever. But basically, the best strat as an SCP is to bomb rush checkpoint, heavy checkpoint. Now, if you're Peanut, kill everyone in light. It doesn't need to be like that. However, if you spawn in heavy, objectively, the best strat is to camp checkpoint. Because think about it. People have to go through you, right? You're the SCPs, and you're camping the one spot that humans have to go through. They have to go through. Like the NTF eventually have to go into heavy, and the D-class and scientists eventually have to get to entrance to escape, right? If you camp that, you negate all of that. You negate the risk of a D-class win, you negate the risk of a Foundation win, you negate all of that. And especially when NTF spawns, you just pray that the next wave is a Chaos spawn, and you just squish them together. I mean, it's like really, really simple. When Nuke goes off, you just hit the surface. It's not that big of a deal, but objectively, that's the best strat. However, it's not the most fun one. And I think Northwood does need to address this a little bit. How personally I would address it, before I go into the next segment, by the way, I don't like how they balance the game. I think lore accurate balance changes are worse than actual gameplay changes most of the time. Most of the time. Sometimes they can actually be better for the game if it like makes sense or whatever, but most of the time gameplay changes are better than lore gameplay changes is what I'm trying to say. Maybe I'll make a video on that later. But how I would fix the camping issue, and again, I know they aren't going to do this, but they should do this. I don't think the 2 checkpoints thing that people are suggesting is a good idea, because that means just half the SCP team will go somewhere else, and it'll make for really crazy entrance spawns. For instance, you could have an entrance spawn on one side of the heavy and have another one on the opposite side of heavy. That's not really good for the game to be that big for both sides. So I don't think they should do the 2 checkpoints thing that a lot of people have been successing. I think what they should do is make dogs room in entrance and then like above heavy or like below heavy. I forget which one it is. But basically, for those who are like somewhat knowledgeable on SCP, the dogs have their own floor, right? It was in one SCP game. It's like SCP multiplayer or something. But basically, what it does is that there's 2 elevators. Well, there's 1 elevator, but there should be 2. I think there's only 1. I'm not sure. But there'll be 2 elevators in heavy, not in entrance. I mean, not including gate A and gate B. There'll be 2 elevators that go up into Dog's room, right? And then there will be a whole separate floor, and then there will be 2 elevators going down into heavy. So on top of the checkpoint that you have the option to go through, if SCPs are camping that, you can take the longer route, or have an option to take the longer route, or possibly, if there's no SCPs camping there, or you're not sure, you can just take the safer route, go up into dog's room, and then just go down into heavy somewhere. Now obviously this would require, you know, art design, audio design, all of that. You would have to like code it so like where it will spawn randomly, just like how the maps are randomly generated, how to spawn randomly generated. There would need to be two, what's it called? Two more special rooms, or four more? No, two more. There would be the hallway that the elevator spawns in an entrance, and the elevator that spawns in heavy. So you would need that as well. You need to have them somehow coded in with the geometry of entrance. But that's basically how it would work. So instead of having the entire this won't solve camping entirely. Let me just make that clear. This won't solve camping entirely for SCPs. However, it would make them more spread out, if that makes sense. Would you, like, it's impossible if every it's impossible. If every SCP is somewhat decent in their camping checkpoint, it's impossible to get through them. However, with this, if there's only, on the official servers, there's only 4 SCPs, at least on the server I play. That means only 3 SCP, or 1 of every SCP is camping the thing. And then if they have a computer, computer can't do anything. And if they have another like SCP, or they have another dog or whatever, then only 1 more SCP is going to camp one of those spots. But it's way easier to get through 1 or 2 SCPs than 4 SCPs in a small corridor. And that's basically just the point of this video, is just to say that this way I think would be way better than the 2 checkpoints thing that I've seen lots of people suggesting. And it would overall solve the camping issue. It won't like solve it. People are still going to camp. You can't change that. You can't change the player's behavior, no matter how many walls you throw up on them. But this would heavily, in my opinion, solve the idea that camping is the best thing to do. And if there's multiple things to get down into heavy, then there's less of a reason to camp in one spot. It would be way easier. Sure, the SCPs, I think they would have to like buff the SCP count. I think it should be like 5 or maybe 6 SCPs, depending on, if there's 25 people, have it just be 5 SCPs. If there's 30 people, have it to be 6, or whatever. You know, Northwind knows how to balance their game most of the time. I mean, they added 4 SCPs for 25 people, which is honestly not that great. But they know, for the most part, good changes for the game. And I think if they just upped the SCPs by like maybe 1 or 2, it would make up for them having to patrol another floor. And the floor won't be, I gotta make this clear, the floor won't be like big. Like, it won't be like big as in like entrance and heavy, for example, and light. It would just be, it would be smaller than all of them. It would be like, I don't know, a little bit more than small, I would say. Just not enough where like, oh, if a D class or something spawns on this floor somehow, they can't get anything. Because there are only 2 things you can get to escape, and that's in light and heavy. I don't think there should be anything to use in the dog's room. Maybe I'll have like some SCP container things where it's like, oh, SCP-500, the hat might be there. But, you know, stuff like that. That's it. Thank you.